One, two. Hi, Erin.
Hi, Emmy.
Oh, it's so nice to see
It's so
you.
nice to see you too. And here we are once again at the Video and Vinyl Club.
That's right. Welcome to the Video and Vinyl Club. I'm Emmy Wildwood. I'm a musician, a producer, an art director, I don't know, person who is just like really loves movies and disappears into them. And this is my gorgeous, talented woman of the world. Well-rounded,
Aw.
talented, good person and co-host Erin Mars.
Oh, thank you, Emmy. I'm Erin Mars. I'm a writer, director, musician, and number one fan of Emmy Wildwood. So grateful to have everybody here today checking this out, listening. We are continuing with our Werewolf series. Today, we're going to be talking about the newest film that has a werewolf in it, or kind of a werewolf in it, The Wolfman.
Yeah, Wolfman. It was a gripping tale of just kidding. I really liked it. I really liked it. I thought I'm dying to know what you thought. So when we first watched this, I called Erin. I'd seen about half of it. I called Erin and I was like, I think it's really dope. I think it's like super dope. And
Yeah,
I think this is different and I think you're really gonna like it.
yeah.
Then I don't know. I think it slowed down a bit for me towards the end of it, and I wasn't quite sure how I felt because I was
Mhm.
like, I don't know. But then, I thought maybe this conversation today would clarify some things.
Sure.
So that's really great. And also, I had watched it before we had our educational werewolves episode.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so I maybe would, think of it differently if I
Yeah,
had
upon a
already done
second
that.
viewing.
Yeah. Upon a second
Upon
viewing.
a second review. Yes.
What'd you think?
Well, I really liked it and I want to talk about it more in depth with you. So let's jump in and do that.
Okay.
So Wolfman was written and directed by Leigh Whannell. Now, if you recognize that name, it's because he co-wrote The Invisible Man and directed that one, which came out in 2020. So he has this way that he crafts like a real suspenseful narrative. Now, The Invisible Man, that's another classic movie character. In the 2020 version that he came out, and I don't know if you have seen it, but The Invisible Man is actually like an abusive husband and he hunts down his wife and continues to like torture her, and they took like a different spin on it. And
Is Invisible Man like is it like a based on a comic book?
no, so in the 50s and like the 40s, monster movies had this like golden era, right? And so you had all these like monster characters coming out. There's Frankenstein, there's Dracula, there's werewolves, there's zombies, there's the Invisible Man, there's the Incredible Shrunken
Oh,
Man, there's the
I've seen the
50-foot
Invisible
woman,
Man.
there's, Godzilla, so it was like all these kind of characters were coming out. Swamp Thing, it came from underneath the earth. Like there's just a ton and ton and ton and ton. The Blob, like so many monster movies were coming out. The
Mhm.
Invisible Man was one of them.
I
Um,
I just am realizing I've seen the original Invisible Man, but I was thinking when you said he made it recently, I was thinking, oh, it must be some update. So it's a remake. He made the remake of or co-wrote the remake of The Invisible Man.
I would not say remake because
Okay.
it delineates from the original storyline of The Invisible Man.
Okay, cool. Oh, but that's
Um,
still interesting.
So yeah, and like in that film, you can see there's like a lot of suspense, and that kind of craftsmanship is in the Wolfman, right? So you kind of have a little bit of a slow burn. Things get foreshadowed, conversations are focused on more like a psychological look at what's going on with the characters. There's a lot of emphasis on their own personal lives and then the transition that's happening into the transformation that one of the characters goes through, obviously becoming a wolf man. Now, this film, it is like a modern reimagining of that classic Universal Studios monster. Okay. Somebody gets attacked by a wolf monster. They don't die, they survive, and then they become just like the monster that attacked them.
Uh-huh.
With the change being that usually a werewolf, that transformation would happen when there's a full moon. That's not part of what we see or really part of the story in this film at all, which is fine. I think that's not a big deal. This has more of the themes that are really common with every werewolf movie, which is, focusing on transformation. But in this one, there's more so an emphasis on the fragility of the human psyche and familial bonds. So we see like the protagonist, who is the father in this film, and he's played by Christopher Abbott. The character's name is Blake Lavelle,
Mhm.
however they say it in the film, but it's played by Christopher Abbott, who I thought did an absolutely phenomenal job.
Yeah.
We have his wife, Charlotte Lavelle, played by Julia Garner, who has been all over the place. Beautiful blonde, curly hair. She was in,
Ruthie in Ozark. I mean, the most
yep, she's Ruthie
delivered,
in Ozark.
she
Yep,
delivered the most incredible performance as Ruthie in Ozark. And she
yes,
was Anna in Inventing Anna.
yes, Anna and Inventing Anna, yes.
Mhm.
And then they have their daughter named Ginger, played by Matilda Firth. I love that character's named Ginger. We know there's that other werewolf movie with a woman called Ginger Snaps. So I thought that was very cute that they had the daughter's name be Ginger. Whether that
Ah,
was, a little winky about like werewolf movies and having a character
yeah,
name that way, I don't really know. But I did think that was cute that her name was Ginger. So basically these actors, and they're primarily the actors that we focus on throughout the film. There are some people who are, around them, but they're definitely not the focus at all of what
yeah.
is going on. And let's jump into the storyline.
So the story opens with like something I've been seeing a lot more lately in films, which is a little nugget of historical background that is meant to frame everything you're about to watch. So it starts out with bugs, a bug biting a creature, right? We see like what is sort
Yeah, it
of the,
opens with ants attacking a wasp.
yeah, so it's ants attacking a wasp, and it sort of insinuates that there is this animal-borne virus being passed around essentially from animal to animal, or showing how maybe it came together or that kind of thing, showing how it may be formed, and then
I
it
thought it was
tell
showing the cruelty of nature.
but then they go immediately right into how the original tribes of the area said that werewolves were created by a man-born illness, that there was a whole story about a man getting lost in the woods,
Yes.
an animal-born illness, that and those all start out from bugs. I thought that was a possible wink at that, like who knows where this came from. Maybe it was from a mosquito, maybe it was from wasp, maybe it was, and I get that seeing those bugs in the beginning shows the cruelty of nature or something like that, but I mean they immediately launch into talking about how it was an animal-borne virus. An animal-borne virus start by a mosquito biting something, or a wasp, or an ant, or something.
Sure.
In the history you were giving me, it often talks about how it's spiritual or something outside of nature, not something so scientifically explained. And
Right.
I thought that was an interesting take because we can all relate to that right now. You know what I mean? With everything that's happened since the pandemic and right now with all these viruses that are getting passed around. So bird flu and all this stuff
Sure. Yeah.
that's jumping up again. So I thought it was a great way to sort of like keep a modern audience sort of interested or understanding where a werewolf could have come from.
I see. I see. I think that's an interesting take on it. I didn't pick it up that way. Sometimes people pick up things that other people don't pick up. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I think
yeah.
that's what's awesome about art is that everybody can look at something and have their own way that it triggers the thing inside of them to connect to what's happening. So, okay, so keep going because that was like the first five
That's it.
seconds
That's
of the beginning.
yeah, that's but to me that's what made
Yeah.
it so interesting is that I couldn't stop thinking about that the entire time because of how disease
Ah,
spreads. It's like basically the spreading of a disease the entire time.
interesting. Okay. Yeah, I see that. I took that. I guess I kind of glossed over that opening shot as just kind of illustrating the viciousness of nature and the one wasp being eaten by all of these ants that it's almost like dying by a thousand paper cuts. It's like certain things can kind of like you can get over, but when it's so much, it's like it overtakes and they're taking down this more technically powerful insect
Yeah.
and ripping him apart. We don't
Yeah.
see the ripping apart. But to me, I just saw that as like a metaphor for the viciousness and the beauty in nature because the shot was actually also really beautiful. Like it's a
Yeah, it
close up and
was.
we're seeing these gorgeous colors of the insects and the lighting. And at the same time, it's like this violent scene that we're
Yeah.
seeing in front of us. You know, this film also starts with basically a flashback. So that was like a short text with image talking about what was going on
Yeah.
or that area specifically and some of the lore in that area. And then we open up to a young boy being awoken by a father's voice saying, like, some military term to like get up. And we see the kid immediately jump out of bed and he's folding his bed. He's doing military squares and the way he's folding the bed. So it's like obviously a military run home. I thought like that small detail, we know that this father is probably oppressive
Yeah.
and very, very controlling. And the fact that his son immediately hears his father's voice and like jumps out of bed almost to a level of, I would say, managing fear of
Yeah.
the father. At least that's the way
Yeah.
it's a little bit to me implied. His bed is precisely made immediately. I mean, that kid looks like he's 8 years old. I don't
Well,
see
yeah.
I
And
don't
right
see children usually acting that
no,
way, right?
no. Right off the bat, you understand that the father is keeping the environment that he is raising his son in as controlled as possible.
Yes.
And if you know anything, and since we're sort of talking about how this film dives into the psychological side
Yes.
of all of this stuff and the fragility of human psyche, it doesn't hurt to discuss the idea that control is something that helps being controlling of your environment is something that helps sort of contain anxiety, especially within men. I mean, it does within women too, but men tend to control their outside circumstances in order to control their inside circumstances since they aren't made to feel comfortable discussing their feelings. And so they tend to control their outside environment, like very structured things to be able to know what to expect during their days and just trying to control the
Yes.
surprises as much as possible. And but that being said, you also get a sense that it's loving even if it's scary. You can tell he's trying to protect his child. It's just that his own fear, his
Yeah.
father's own fear
Yeah. It almost
causes
seems like he might have PTSD because you realize this is a
exactly.
military guy. He's
Yes.
got the tattoos. He's got the, you know, special radio in the basement that he can like talk to other people. And they're living in the middle of nowhere. They're
Mhm.
completely
Where
in
are
the
they?
woods. They're in Oregon,
Oregon, that's what I thought.
which is beautiful. I mean, some of the shots were absolutely gorgeous of
Well,
the scenery, and it was just magical, some of those
yes,
scenes.
I noticed that too. And like right in the opening shot scene is so he wakes his son up and they go out. They're going out for a hunt, and you see them looking over this beautiful valley of mountains and a river running through it of Oregon. And he says this view never gets old. So we're supposed to understand that they live there because it's beautiful. I don't know if it's worth it, would be worth it for me. But the shot is so gorgeous. And that's
Yeah, it's
the
like a
other thing.
painting. Yeah.
Yeah, like the very first, I mean, to me, the first like 15 minutes were so deeply fun because it was lovely to see and really sets the story up in a strong way. But anyways, go on.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the beginning, right? And then they go into the woods. We see the father and son go into the woods, and there's a deer, and the father has said to the son, like, you need to stay close to me. You can't, go off. You need to follow me. Like, these woods are really big. There's stuff in these woods you're not going to be prepared for, pretty much. And at one point, there's a deer that shows up, and the son runs to the side to try to get a better shot of the deer or something like that. And the father, sees the deer, and it's a fawn. It's not an adult deer. It's like a young deer, right? So
Mhm.
he's not going to shoot that deer. It's a fawn. That being said, the son then has run off into the woods and suddenly starts to feel the presence of something watching him, feels very uncomfortable. The father, runs around the corner and is like, you can't leave me, like freaking out. You can't leave me. These woods are dangerous. And suddenly they both realize there is something watching them, hunting them. The
Yeah,
hunter has become the hunted. They run for
cover.
this deer hunting.
It's like a hunting tower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He has his son like run up there. Then he gets up there, and we hear something at the bottom of the tree. You're hearing kind of like this growling, super animalistic thing, and then it goes away.
Mhm.
And next scene, the father's in the basement, and he's like, on his CB radio, like, I saw the guy. I saw that missing hiker who we now think is a Wolfman. Like, I saw him. It's real. He's like really out there.
Yeah.
And
Before you move forward, I just wanted to say there was one powerful line in this hunting scene
yes,
where you can see the father's, again, it's sort of like PTSD or his militant side at where but that he's trying to keep his son safe. And he said, the son's not listening to him and he says, listen to me, and then he feels guilty. It's an important moment because later we see him inherit this exact sort of behavior from his
mm,
father
hmm
and put it out onto his own child. But basically he says he gets angry when he's scared, gets angry when he's worried that his child's going to be in danger. And the father says to the son, dying is not hard. It's the easiest thing in the world. So I'm trying to keep you safe. You have to these woods are more dangerous than you could ever imagine. It's like his PTSD, his paranoia is there for a reason, you know,
yeah, and rightly so
and
is what
rightly
we
so.
discover. He's
Mhm.
not scared for an imaginary causation. He there's a cause to be worried about.
That's
There's a
right.
thing to be worried about. Um, And I think that's a very powerful flashback in the sense that it sets up the whole tone of the film.
Mhm.
And as you alluded to, the way that the dynamics between the father and son relationship, when that son then becomes a father, the way that he also handles fear with his own daughter. So we're
Yes.
30 years later, we're in New York City. The dad is walking with his daughter. He tells her, and you see they have like a cute relationship. They're having little jokes. The next thing she's doing is she's walking on the barrier that is keeping traffic out of a certain way. And he's like, get down, get down. And then this homeless guy runs up to her, crazy guy, says some kind of crazy stuff. And he like grabs his daughter back. And, she's really scared. And he's like, I told you not to do that. Like he kind of freaks out. And then they have that moment of reconnection. Um,
Yeah,
and
he
we,
does exactly what his dad did in the first scene. He says, what are you doing? And then he feels guilty and he goes, I'm just trying to keep you safe. That kind of thing. He's inherited getting angry when he's scared.
yeah.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of this film touches on the duality of human nature, that we can be loving and at the same time terrifying to the people that
Oh,
we love.
yes. Of
And that's
course.
something that comes up again and again in this film. And also that fear of becoming the monster, the fear of him becoming like his father, the
Mhm.
fear that his father was controlling and overbearing. And in that moment with his daughter, we're seeing him then quickly notice that in himself and be like, okay, I'm sorry. Like that's,
He said,
pulling back from that.
I don't want to be like that.
Yeah, I don't want to be like that.
Yeah. Hmm.
And then we meet the wife. We're in the apartment. The wife comes in. She's on a business call. He seems to be annoyed. We later learn that he's been out of work for a while. He's a writer who hasn't been able to get a gig. So his wife is pretty much the person who's supporting them. And he's probably feeling, probably lost about that and doesn't seem to really have that confidence of like what he's doing in his life. His wife and him have some tension. He meets with her after work and is like, I love you. This has been hard. They kind of have this moment of like really talking
Says they're
and
not happy.
they're
Yeah.
not happy. And it's pretty clear that they're not happy. And he's like, my father, they finally declared him dead. He's been missing for a long time. And let's go out to Oregon to his house. We'll take like a little vacation. We'll be there. We'll just kind of, you know, whatever. So they agree. They get a moving truck. They drive out into the middle of nowhere. So we're
Pretty quick,
back
pretty quickly.
pretty quickly. I would say within 15 minutes in this film, we're back in the woods,
We're
right?
back in the
Within the first
woods,
20 minutes. Yeah,
in the
at least.
dark, on a road.
They meet somebody as they're on
Hmm.
this road. They're at a fork in the road, and he can't remember which way is his father's driveway. And they see this guy up in a deer stand, and he comes down, and the wife is freaked out. This is not her environment. This is, she's a New York City girl, or where maybe they're living in Seattle, wherever they are, it's a city. This is the middle of,
Yeah.
nowhere like that. And so this guy coming over who's obviously a hunter and they don't know, and he's got a gun, she's like not cool with this. And the daughter is also feeling pretty nervous. He comes down, finds out he's actually the son of one of the other guys who lived right around the corner from them.
The son
Um,
of the guy who his father called on the CB radio in the
yes,
beginning. Hmm.
yes. And so he's like, oh no, that's not, that's my driveway. Your driveway's over here. Here, I'll hop in with you. I'll show you where to go. And they continue to drive until suddenly a man is in the road. They get into this accident. The truck he tries to avoid the guy, pulls over to the side, the truck flips. They're all kind of hurt. It's like, oh my God, what's happening? And they realize they're kind of suspended up above this gully. And the guy who is the neighbor opens the door, even though the man driving's like, don't do that, don't do that. He opens the door and he falls down to the ground. And immediately, pretty much a monster or an animal comes out, grabs him, he's screaming, and drags him into the woods. And they're like, oh my, this is not good. This is really, really not good. They
Yeah.
eventually all get out. They're terrified as the father is trying to close the door back to prevent the animal from coming in. He gets scratched on his arm. He gets everybody out of the car. They run to the house. They get in, locking the door. We hear something coming up behind them. Unlocks the door, gets them in, locks the door, puts a shelf against it, and then we're in the house. One of the things that I think is beautiful about this film, and I think we can all tell from here, right, that the man eventually becomes a wolf man also. And that transformation happens over time and the fear of the family and in what's happening. A lot of this film kind of reminded me of the body horror that you see in like The Fly, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So anybody who's watched The Fly, any of the Flies, let's say, because there's quite a few
Yeah.
with the remakes.
My
You know,
mom loved The Fly.
okay,
So I
and
saw The Fly a lot.
You're very familiar with The Fly. Okay.
I'm
So
familiar
for
with
people who are
Fly.
not familiar with The Fly, there's these scientists, they've created these two pods and they can basically transport somebody from one side of the pod to the other, or like, let's say a piece of fruit from one to the other. And they decide they're going to experiment on it with a human. And so the scientist gets in the one pod, they push the thing to go to the other side, but what they don't realize is a fly has also flown into the pod. And so when he dissolves from the one pod and reappears on the other side, he is no longer just himself. He's now been recombined with the DNA of a fly, and he's completely crazy looking. Now, depending
Yeah.
on the film, that makeup and how that look is
Yeah.
can be more gross or it can be quite
Yeah.
literal, like the guy's got a fly head or he's like this gross muck of a thing. And this film felt, in the way that they were showing the transformation, it had that kind of body horror of like the slow disintegration of the
Yeah.
human body into that wolf body, which I think is the essential part of almost every werewolf movie. Is
Yeah.
you have a scene where we're seeing the person turn into the wolf. Now, not
Mhm.
all films show it to such a grotesque degree, but we see this guy slowly, things are happening, right? He loses a tooth. And he's like, oh, I must have hit, my jaw hurts. I must have hit my head
The
on the
cla the
steering
classic
wheel.
the classic werewolf loses a tooth kind of that happens in like every werewolf movie I've seen. People are like, "Oh,
Oh,
what
why's my,
happened?
yeah, why's
Why
my
is my teeth falling out?" Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, as like a bigger tooth grows in.
Yeah.
And then his wife sees he's got this cut and he's like, I think I cut it on the truck. And she's like, this looks like a animal scratch or something. This doesn't look like it was cut with glass or metal. And he
Yeah.
doesn't say anything about it. And he's just,
Yeah.
she bandages it up. And then we realize his hearing is starting to change. He starts hearing this like thumping and he's like, do you hear that? And they're like, what are you talking about? And, he goes through the whole house and he's like, going upstairs, and he finds a spider, just its legs walking across the wall. He's hearing that intensely. And so we see as he continues to transform, they continue to be scared. We see the animal is still outside, so they're not sure how they're going to get out as they're then trapped inside with this guy. And so the daughter, very much loves the father, and he starts to lose the ability to really speak words back that like they can understand. And he loses the ability to really hear words. And so his wife is trying to say to him as he's in this like feverish state and he starts like touching his hair and his hair starts falling off. His skin is kind of changing. He starts eating like this jerky that he finds in the basement and then like another tooth falls out. Just like all these like things keep happening. She's getting more scared of him. Um and we're seeing there's like this exploration of like the psychological toll of grappling with like a person's inner demons blending with these like gothic body horror elements, which I think is kind of on trend with a lot of films that touch with the cursing that's classic to the werewolf lore. This person is cursed tragically to bear the burden of this transformation. One thing I want to talk about though is all of the effects of these changes that he's going through. These are all predominantly practical effects for the transformation sequences. Director Leigh Whannell, he was committed to a 100% practical all makeup approach, deliberately avoiding CGI to achieve a more visceral and grounded horror experience. So they used like prosthetics, special makeup effects designer Arjun Tutwin. He led the creative design, crafting a transformation process that unfolds in stages over several hours. So
Yeah, so really quickly, I just wanted to say that this is a thing that's coming back more and more. So with another movie we discussed, A Different Man,
the substance,
The Substance, and even when we talked with Olga Turka about
special
Terrifier,
effects makeup
yeah,
and
Terrifier 3, the
yeah.
director of that movie is building all those prosthetics, all that goo, all that stuff. We are going back to a time where people are hungry for that kind of like real work, less digital work, less digital effects. We we want to be overwhelmed by reality. And so we're getting as close as we possibly can,
Yes.
with this
Yeah.
stuff.
And I think what's interesting about like the way that this guy turns into a wolf, as
Hmm.
opposed to other werewolf films or like Wolfman films that
Hmm.
have like a lot of fur and there's like a lot of hair, this actually almost went like the opposite way, which I think touched more on that idea of this being an infection, that he
Yeah.
looks really sick. Like
That's
his
y-
face is kind of, changing. And as they're doing
yes.
this, the method that they're using, it really kind of is hitting on that gradual, continuous loss of this man's humanity.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of aligned more with what you had been talking about before about that first scene being kind of touching on it being an infection and a disease, that this is
Well,
touching more into that rather than this being like a mythical curse, which is also
well,
why the moon isn't played a part in this at all, because this is
that's
a disease, so it wouldn't be part of, right? So
right.
he's
Yes.
not a werewolf. He really does turn into like a wolf man.
But I also would like to say that bringing it back to what you were initially saying is, you know, a disease can be more than just infection under the skin. It can be in your mind. And that's the other thing is we start sort of seeing how, you know, the alignment in time of him being already in a fragile state. He has to go back home, and all of a sudden, all the same sort of problems that plagued his father, they start coming back to him, starts losing himself more and more
Yes.
because he's unhappy with his wife and all of this stuff. So we start seeing how it affects your mind as well to be, you know, diseased by whatever emotional, problems we have or uh even if and so it's sort of like these two run it's like the metaphors are occurring side by side the entire time. You're okay. It's kind of like
Yeah.
what's really the difference and did one thing influence the other and that, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
definitely,
Hmm.
definitely. And I think there is that mirroring of what his inner world has been coming to the forefront in matching his outer world. He has a loss of control that I think as a
Hmm.
character he had already been feeling, and now is even more so. He can't stop it. He can't, he's lost touch. And the one moment where his daughter, is like, daddy's sick, and she's able to be like, I love you, daddy, I love you, I love you. And finally he's able to like hear those words through this change that's happening to him, where he can't hear and he can't see like he was able to before. He hears her say, I love you, which then comes up again later at the end of the film when he says that back to her as he's like a wolf guy. A part of the process for, Blake Lovell, played by Christopher Abbott, to become this Wolfman, he had to undergo extensive prosthetic applications that took between 2.5 to 7.5 hours, depending on what stage of the transformation they were in. And
Well.
apparently, the first makeup test was reportedly so realistic and disturbing that it scared even the film crew. So I think that's something, if you're into just seeing like and to me this really is part of that, like the magic of movie making. That
Yeah.
is what this is, right? It's like
Yeah.
this stuff, they're making it look so gross and so real at the same time. There's these shots with the hands, his fingertips are falling off as these like claws are coming out. It's gross,
Hmm.
like it's super gross, but those shots are incredible. And like the skill to design something like that, like holy moly, wow.
Well, I noticed from a shooting perspective too. Did you notice how dark this movie
Oh,
was?
it's so dark.
It's
Yes.
so dark. I was like, is this on purpose? Because all of this stuff happens in the dark, or is this to make the effects, the makeups, and all that stuff look more convincingly real? Because you're really just seeing it in the shadows. You're not really like getting close up. Like the close-ups are made to look scarier and realer by being, you know, so in the shadows, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
I think that's a good point. I don't know. I thought part of it being so dark was kind of an emphasis on the darkness of the moment. I mean, I think that
Yeah,
there's also this thing with it being a disease that they keep talking about, or like an illness or the sickness that he's getting. You know,
yeah.
you could see this as the way that the family is so tortured and trapped by his illness and what's happening. It's as
Hmm.
if, you have a loved one with any kind of terminal illness. You're trapped
Hmm.
there. You're just
Right.
trapped watching them go through these changes, and there's ultimately nothing you can do when
Yep.
it's to a certain point. There's nothing you can do. And so there's that psychological fear,
Hmm.
a deep sadness, and I think like an incredible helplessness, which these characters are all going through. The person who's Blake, who's going through that transformation, but also, his wife and his daughter, and
Yeah.
feeling like they're terrified.
Yeah.
And the
They don't
wife,
recognize him. They don't, it's like they start feeling less sad because it's not him anymore. The whole thing is the movie is a slow burn at the end. I mean, I don't know how to say it. What is it when the slow burn happens at the end? The second half of the movie is way more detailed
well, there's
and
more action. I think there's a lot more like actual fighting. They're running out of the house.
yeah,
They're
it's like
trying to
let's
escape. Then we've like
yes.
really hit what most horror movies have like a lot of it in, right? They're like
Yeah.
escaping the monster, but the husband is also like turning into a monster, but they're not sure what to do. And they're thinking they can get him to a hospital, or they're going to at least try. And the wife has got the daughter in the thing. She's got her husband in the car, and they're like trying to do this whole thing. And then the monster from the woods is coming out, and her husband is becoming like more and more into that type of monster.
Yeah.
So the two monsters are both fighting. And we then realize like that monster that has been from the woods is actually the grandfather. And so you can even think about like the way that fathers fighting with each other, like the son still fighting with the dad, being like, you don't control me anymore. Like, you
Yeah.
don't have the right to come and do this, as another, you know, bigger picture takeaway.
The symbolism and the metaphor was just you were watching. He eventually caved and he became like his father. It's like you have two choices. You can get out and go towards the direction of your family and your love and the way you want to be, or you can. His eventual demise was at the hands of his father and in his father's world, and he becomes just like his father. So it's like we get metaphorically, we see that happen, and quite literally, we see that happen because he becomes the Wolfman. Eventually, his father's fear took him down, or his father's need to be out there and isolated took him down. So I thought it was a sad story, but eventually, you see that the daughter and the wife understand that that's not him anymore, and it's about protecting themselves because they aren't sick. So
Yeah.
they have to stay unsick, and it doesn't matter, it's about they have to live, they have to do well. They can't try and save a lost cause, essentially. But I thought that I read a little bit about the director Leigh Whannell. He said he drew inspiration from his own personal experiences, including his close friend's battle with ALS. So there's a little of that in there too. So he wanted to infuse that film with themes of illness and familial trauma. So it's like exactly what we're picking up from it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
And the director actually stated, there are horror movies all around us if we look. Well, ain't that the truth?
Yes. Yes.
Some other little cute things are like he shared his cinematic influences. During pre-production, Lee hosted weekly film screenings for his crew featuring movies like The Shining, The Thing, The Fly, Under the Skin. He just so that they'd all get inspired, which I thought was
Yeah.
really cute and fun.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And then just to talk a little bit about music, the musical score was by composer Benjamin Wallfish, and
Uh-huh.
he was asked to create a score reminiscent of his work on The Invisible Man, particularly the piece Denouement, to maintain a thematic continuity between the films. So he wanted this film to connect back to the Invisible Man in a way. He wanted it to sound similar, which is neat. He's establishing a continuity. He's establishing a style. And it's this
Definitely.
thing that Aaron and I love to talk about, which is when you continue to work with the same people, you start to build a language and the
Yep.
fluidity and an ease to making art, which I love. I love people who do that. Yeah, and so what's also really cool about this is it's combining classic horror elements with contemporary themes. And so I really did feel like, I'm using some sort of stock language here by
Hmm.
saying it is a fresh take on an iconic monster tale, but that's literally what I said to Aaron right after I watched it. I was like, it's different. It's a new kind of vibe for like, I was like, the way he becomes a werewolf is a whole new thing. And I
Hmm.
am reading here a little bit about how like it's what we both said. He is trying to show the fragility with that opening bug scene. Trying to show both things. He's trying to show how people get sick, but also the fragility of how the odds are stacked against us, essentially, and fragility of the brutality of nature. And when the odds are stacked against us, something's going to take us down. Do you know what I mean? And so, anyways, I thought it was just kind of refreshing to see it in a different way. Now, I know you love a good full moon, Erin,
I
and
do.
that
Yeah.
there's plenty of room for full moons, but um I don't know. I liked that it was sort of like a story grounded in reality because how unlike I mean, there's all kinds of weirds. People get sick and all kinds of weird things happen to them. Do you know what I mean? So
Totally.
it's not that
Totally.
far off.
Yeah. Here's also just my quick take on, I think,
Mhm.
the title. Does he become like wolf-like? Yes. Is he a werewolf? No. Titling the film Wolfman, do you have an audience coming in and they're thinking they're going to hit some classic werewolf tropes? Yeah.
Mhm.
Is that the reason why this film has a mediocre, you know, like critical score and audience score? Yeah, I think so. Because I think that, you know, there's a little bit of the pacing, it's a little bit slow.
Pacing stressed me
Um,
out at the end.
yeah,
I felt like the first half was way better than the second half. But I
yeah.
don't know.
I mean,
I get it later because I get the second half is where we see him turn into the monster. So the second half is really like about the changes and the transformation.
well, I think actually, yeah, I mean, more in the second half, he doesn't fully really change until there's like almost 30 minutes left in the film.
Right.
So it's a long time where we're building up, we're building up, we're building up, we're building up, we're seeing tensions, so I think part of it is maybe
We're used to seeing that transformation happen in the beginning of a werewolf
or
movie.
just yeah, maybe faster. And I
Yeah.
think because it was that tie-in to disease, which I think was great. I mean, honestly, I think this is a great film. My
Yeah.
one issue is I don't think the title did it any favors with it not being a classic werewolf movie. The other problem I personally had with it was the casting. I thought that Christopher Abbott did a really great job. Now, people who are familiar with Christopher Abbott as an actor, he's been in a ton of stuff, and you might actually be more familiar with him from Girls, where he played Marnie's boyfriend, Charlie.
Oh, right.
Um,
That's who he is. Oh, but I have such a good fun fact about this.
yes,
It was originally the lead role was cast as Ryan Gosling.
yes,
You saw that? And then he had a
yes,
scheduling conflict, so Abbott stepped in.
yes. And I don't think I would have liked it as much with Ryan Gosling.
I was happy that it was
I thought
Christopher Abbott.
Christopher Abbott as an actor brought this beautiful darkness to it and this like seriousness
Hmm.
and a lot of depth to the character that
Hmm.
really, to me, I was very impressed by. I thought he
Hmm.
played it really beautifully and with almost this like level of sadness that was somewhat unexpected. And it really kind of honed in the humanity that this character has.
I didn't really feel like for Julia Garner, I didn't really feel like there was a lot of opportunity for her acting to shine in there. It wasn't
Well,
really like an acting, like to me, it's like she's so about her tone of voice. She's so about her. That's all the stuff that's like great about her. So it was just kind of weird that she was in it at all to me. I don't know. It just didn't
yeah,
seem
I
like
agree
quite the
with
right
that.
fit. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. That was my one acting critique. And I love her as an
Hmm.
actor. I think
Yeah.
she's wonderful. She's also young, and the
Yeah.
daughter in this film is like 12.
Yeah.
So if this is actually Julia Garner's daughter, that means she had this kid when she was like 18.
That daughter was 12. She looked like 6.
No, the daughter wasn't 6. She was definitely older. I I just didn't I didn't think I mean, look, we know that the married couple, their chemistry is not supposed to be in a good place, but I felt like they
Yeah.
had zero chemistry.
Yeah, I did too.
Um,
I did too. I just felt like I feel like the character development did not happen for Julia Garner. There was like, why do we care? Why are we rooting for you to win again? Do you know what I mean? Why is this
yeah, I
so
mean,
heartbreaking?
she
It-
generally seemed like she was annoyed more
yeah,
than like
yeah, but also
hurt in
we
certain
didn't
moments.
know anything about her or how much she used to love him or any of that stuff that makes you feel horrible that they're like getting torn apart and she's losing her husband and the daughter. We more see that with him and his daughter. Do you know what I mean? But even then I would have liked to see, I don't know. I just feel like they didn't build that connection so that we're like feeling totally torn up by him changing over. I did see one other thing, by the way, that at the end that there's like an emotional tribute to his brother, who the end tributes to Chandler Tuck, which is the late brother of the other co-writer, Corbett Tuck, who died by
Oh.
suicide in 2023. And that this personal loss deeply influenced the film's emotional depth and themes. So you can kind of see the psychological breakdown that is happening too, and how that can really align with someone becoming a monster. Someone, can change so much you don't recognize them. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like there wasn't enough of that either. There wasn't enough explaining. Like he loses it on his kid in the beginning, but like everybody loses it on their kid. Like that doesn't mean you are having a slow decline into insanity because you like scream at your kid because you're scared one time, you
Well,
know?
to me, he generally seemed like he was depressed.
Yeah.
I thought his like general vibe when we first meet him, he just seems depressed. Like
Yeah.
he seems like he's, very connected to his kid, loves his kid,
Yeah.
but he's got this overall almost like flatness to him, which I
Flatness.
think is
Yeah.
actually really hard to portray as an
Yeah.
actor, right? Like he's not overselling, and it's this muted tone that he kind of carries throughout that to me I thought was why he did such an incredible job in the role.
Hmm.
You can tell there's this like inner conflicted feelings and also these feelings of like I'm failing. Like
Yeah.
I don't have a job. My wife is supporting me. I like can't control my temper with my kid. I'm like totally disconnected from my wife. I don't know where my father is, who I'm also alienated with. Like his
Yeah.
only family. And when he talks about his father being finally declared dead after being missing for so long, he's like, you are the only family that I have. You and my daughter. That's it. That's my only
Yeah.
family. And I
Yeah.
think there's this real fear that can encircle a person with that understanding. There's no
Hmm.
one else to lean on. There's no one else to
Yeah.
go to.
Yeah.
You get the feeling that this man is in many ways very isolated.
Hmm.
And I think that
Yes, I feel like that's really what
yeah,
it is. The
yeah, the emotional
isolation. Yeah.
isolation that he has, his wife does not have.
Yeah,
She's talking to
no.
coworkers, she's out in the world, she's
Yes,
more connected
exactly.
to what's actually
Yes.
happening. You know,
Mm-hmm.
she has a job, she has ambition, she's doing these different things, whereas his world is very, very small.
Yeah.
And I think that there's a level of depression that he's going through with that as all these things are going. He's having a really hard moment in his life.
Yeah.
That being said, I
And so
think
he's like pushing her away too. Do you
he's
know what
pushing
I
her away
mean?
too, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
wish that there had been more chemistry between the two of them. I
Yeah.
thought they just didn't seem well matched. I couldn't see
Yeah.
those two people being in love. I couldn't see those two people ever really being connected. She looks so young to me that
Yeah.
I was like, this doesn't make sense. So to me,
Yeah.
I just didn't love the casting. And again, I
Yeah.
love her as an actor. It's nothing about her. And I thought she did a
No,
good
she's
performance
great.
with what she had.
Yeah.
But I think had they cast another actress who had a more intense chemistry naturally
Yeah.
with Christopher Abbott, we would have seen a different feel in regard to that other character. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Totally.
I thought the
Totally.
daughter was amazing. She's this little English actress, and she did a
She's
phenomenal
English?
job.
I
Oh
didn't know
yeah,
that.
dude.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
So what's your record vinyl rating?
I'm gonna give it a 5.
I was gonna say 6.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was shot wonderfully.
Mhm. Yeah, I thought it was shot wonderfully, except for it was so dark I had to go change my settings.
Yeah, yeah,
Did you?
yeah. I had to go into a different room.
Yeah, it was like a tiny bit too dark.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
By the way, this movie's streaming on Peacock for free.
Cool. I didn't know that. I paid
Yeah.
for this movie.
Oh, so did I. So did
Yeah,
I on
like
Apple. But now suddenly they've. So I don't know. That means two things about it. That means it's getting a great audience rating. You know what I mean? That it has watchability to it. So that's something.
yeah,
But
maybe. I mean,
yeah.
the production budget for this film was $25 million dollars, and it grossed 34.9 million worldwide.
Wow.
Um, but despite it making back its budget, it did underperform what the expectations were for this film. And it opened third in the box office its opening weekend, and then it had a significant drop the subsequent weeks. So, and I think it was because people are like, "Whoa, like we're gonna go see this awesome werewolf movie," and then they're like, "This is a different thing that I expected, but it was cool, but it was like a little slower, and there's not, in a lot of werewolf movies, the guy who becomes a werewolf is then like ripping off limbs of people, and it's like, ow, like chaos that reigns supreme." That's not really what's happening in this one. And so I think maybe people were a little bit disappointed with that. Is it a
Yeah.
beautiful film? Yes. Is the script gorgeous? Yes. It's a great film. It's not my favorite werewolf movie. I don't think it's a werewolf movie.
Yeah, it's not really a werewolf movie. It's like I mean,
So
it
that's
is, but
why,
it's like a dog creature movie.
and I think in some ways, right, like this is saying something about where we are right now in this point in time. Like we still relatively have just come out of the pandemic. It wasn't that far away.
Yeah.
I think we still in the human psyche have that fear of like infectious diseases and all that stuff. So that's, I think, part of the reason why this is powerful and can resonate in some ways. Um, I would love us, I know next we are going to be discussing Serial Mom on that series flip. And I think after that, we should talk about another werewolf movie, a werewolf movie so famous. So many people have heard of it. So many people have seen it. It's, some would say, infamous. And what is that movie?
I don't know.
Teen Wolf.
Woo!
Okay, is it a classic? Is it a classic? Yes, but is it a classic in the sense of the werewolf's going to be ripping off people's arms and stuff? No, but does it have Michael J. Fox, one of the greatest actors in history, one of my favorite actors in the world?
Yep.
Yes. Is that why we're
Yep.
going to watch it?
Yes.
Absolutely. Is it
Yes. What about
insane?
the Twilight
Absolutely.
series? Just kidding.
The toilet series.
I'm kidding.
Maybe another time.
Yeah, I'm
So let's
joking.
talk about that. And we're going to keep focusing also back onto music. I think that, we're called the Video and Vinyl Club. And so we're definitely going to hit back onto some of the music that we're listening to and that we want you to listen to and that we've picked up in our local our local
Record rack.
vinyl record store. Yep.
Record stores. Yeah.
All right.
But that being said, we started this with you telling me that you were my number one fan. So I'm gonna tell everyone if they need a song to get pumped up to go listen to Muna, Muna, Muna song number one fan. It is so good. It goes,
Ooh.
oh my God, like I'm your number one fan, so iconic, like big, like Stan, like I would trade my life just to hold your hand. I'm your number one fan. I'm your number one. Boo doo doo doo. It's really good.
Oh, love it, love it, love it.
But the lead up to it is I've been looking at myself in the mirror saying, don't leave me now, don't leave me now. I've
Oh,
been
cute.
looking at myself in the mirror saying, don't leave me now. And I turn around like, oh my God, like I'm your So you're talking to yourself the whole
I
time. You
love
see, isn't that
that.
nice? Turn it on. You'll like that one, Erin. It pumps you up
I
big
will
time.
love.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's a good
Awesome.
one.
Thank you so much for the recommendation. And thank you to our
Yeah.
audience for listening and for all your support. If you've checked us out lately, if you were tuned into your Apple Podcasts, you'll see that we're now on video on the Apple Podcasts, which is
Yeah.
stupendous. And we're just having a little bit of a glitch with Spotify. We're going to get that back up and running soon. So thanks for your patience. Thanks for your support. And we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Bye.
1, 2.